Why does Kroenen need a clockwork mechanism in his chest? What can his movements tell us? What is this strange way to express emotions? What exactly has he done to his body, and why, after all? I'll answer these questions about our old buddy Kroenen and more in this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Enjoy! The subject of Karl Ruprecht Kroenen, a Nazi who suffers from a rare form of masochism that manifests itself as addiction to surgery. A creature who, by some monstrous will, is still kept alive. But he wasn't always like this. In the graphic novels, the source material, Kroenen was a chatty scientist, a doctor with a lively mind. But he was not such an immediate physical threat as in Guillermo del Toro's screen adaptation. Del Toro once said that Kroenen from the comics is the kind of guy who gets really scared if you touch his car. However, his knowledge of medicine and other sciences has helped him conduct horrifying experiments on humans. In search of immortality and to create an indestructible army, he worked on creating human-machine hybrids. Actually, this is what saved his life. He made himself a likeness of his creations after his body was mutilated during a failed experiment. Since then, he wears a gas mask to protect from the harmful effects of the environment. Comics did not give details of his newly mutilated appearance. According to one of the characters, he turned himself into a terrifying abomination. Del Toro, on the other hand, makes Kroenen a dangerous killer in his screen adaptation. The main killer of the Third Reich, according to Professor Broom, and whose image, I think, many people associate with these sounds. Except that at that time, Broom didn't fully realize that Kroenen's true puppeteer was Rasputin, whom he worshipped. And all this is accompanied by a perverse symphony of masochism in the process of surgically altering his own physiology. Del Toro not only revised the incarnation of the picturesque secondary antagonist, he created a whole revised film biography that was presented in print and DVD materials which came with the film at the time. A biography that I personally find inconsistent with some of the visuals, and not only the visuals in the film itself, but first things first. Kroenen was born at the end of the 19th century in Germany and toured Europe in his youth, as he was not only a blonde boy with an angel's face, but also had an angelic voice. He had been doing this until his young voice broke. Kroenen's love for music is the focus of 2004 film, especially in the director's cut. But he will never give up his other hobbies, namely acts of masochism from an early age, which as he grew older developed into a progressive morphological disorder. That is, constant dissatisfaction and quote-unquote improvement of his appearance. And of course, his engineering talent. The technical equipment of Project Ragnarok, supervised by Rasputin, is a credit to Kroenen. But it is not completely true that Kroenen abandoned his creative realization. What is true is that he has just changed his role. The very first frames with Kroenen show his narcissism and sense of superiority over others at its finest. Notice how artificial, theatrical, and scenic his movements are. He gives the command to spin the mechanism of the portal catalyst in an artistic way, even when it has already been stuttered without him. Here he choreographically makes a movement with his hand that has absolutely no practical significance, and rotates absolutely static elements on Rasputin's equipment. Why? That's right, because there are spectators right in front of him. After this whirlwind of emotions, he descends the stairs with his head dramatically down, and the exposure and display of blades in the overall action is always the climax and the calling card of his performance. Kroenen's movements are never sharp or abrupt, they will always be choreographically composed and smooth. This is the effect of stage culture of the early 20th century. As our old man Stark would say, Kroenen is a prima and he needs spectators. But this is not always true, and not only self-adoration with blades proves that. Remember that scene when, being in his temporary shelter, after he had heard the sounds of approaching danger, you could see surprise on his masked face? But where did it come from if all of that was part of originally prepared plan to enter into the very heart of the bureau? So there was no surprise, and there couldn't have been. But they weren't true emotions. This was Kroenen's acting, in a performance where he was an actor. This bureau entrance performance was one of the main plays in his life, as his goal was to kill the archenemy of his worshipped master. That's why for his performance he puts on his most beautiful mask. It's an honor to act in this play. He puts on his ugliest mask in anticipation of a fight with Hellboy. He does so to show disdain. The reason for this is quite banal, it's jealousy. Rasputin calls Hellboy his child, while an immensely loyal Kroenen often gets the same disdain. And speaking of inconsistencies in Kroenen's biography and in his visual behavioral details, of course it's just my opinion. It's unknown how the character spent his time from 44 to 2004, but it is believed that after his defeat in 44, when a piece of metal structure nailed him to a wall, he repaired himself with a new arm, a piece of spine, the unnatural crunching sounds of which can be heard here, and a mechanical heart replacement. Professor Broom is the one who removes the clockwork mechanism from his chest. By winding up his heart, he literally winds up his physical motor skills. He does this mostly in anticipation of fights or other activity. In the case of spine and arm, it's understandable, but why would it be necessary to replace the heart of a creature whose life had already been sustained by black magic, the flesh of which could no longer be called alive? In 44, his veins were already filled with sand instead of blood. 60 years later, Broom would note that this is an attribute of a creature whose life was fueled by dark forces. After these gunshots, Kroenen looks at his body, which is still standing, in surprise. This can be seen as either one more theatrical gesture or genuine surprise, which might suggest that he had become fully undead not long before these events. There is one interesting detail in the visuals of Kroenen's naked flesh. First, we see his arm with a patch of skin sewn with thread, the wound not healed up, whereas most of his other gruesome scars look healed. So what we see is how the surgeries differ. The ones that Kroenen conducted on himself while he was still alive, still human, and ones that he made when he turned undead. And among the surgeries of the first type, we see quite a unique and radical dissection of the left side of the chest. Like Kroenen was trying to access his heart in an unorthodox way. Extensive access, I must say, which tells us that he had been making comprehensive heart modifications back when he was human, and that's when they had some functional sense. And the need to wind up his heart is nothing more than a residual affection to mechanical devices in his body. Convulsively shutting himself down before surrendering to Bureau agents is just another theatrical performance that was aimed at the right audience. In fact, there was no shutdown. Kroenen's functionality depends on the dark will of the puppeteer. That's why Broom makes a mistake, believing that removing the winding mechanism is guaranteed to switch Kroenen off. In an alternative ending of the Hellboy sequel, Kroenen's head, placed in the robot's body, comes alive, but didn't happen mainly because of another appearance of the Master. By the way, Kroenen's mechanical modifications are present in the film in the form of regular ticking and chirping sounds. He just adores winding and gearing mechanisms, that's all. The same can be said about Kroenen's gas mask. What is he trying to protect from infections? His half-rotten flesh? No, he just loves his masks. He doesn't even need to breathe, in fact. What is there that needs to be oxygenated? Sand? A good example is ticking mechanisms in his chest armor, which have no use other than decoration. Neither does the clockwork mechanism in his chest. Body dysmorphic disorder is also an odd characterization of Kroenen's obsession. Does an individual who spends 99% of his time wearing masks and even considers the masks to be his true face give a damn about his appearance? Sure, Kroenen has a perverted perception of beauty, but do asymmetrically mutilated face and body match the style of his external costumed image? No. Stephen King had a story called Survivor Type, if you remember it. The story is about a surgeon who ended up on a desert island with a lot of drugs. Waiting for help and having no other opportunities, he gradually ate himself, going as far as the ears, cheeks, lips, eyelids, and so on. The anatomy is not important here. The point is that the man used his body tissue as a consumable. And Kroenen, once motivated by a desire to understand surgery as an art, also used his face as a consumable. By refining the art of the scalpel on it, he practiced removing soft tissues, opening skulls, forming one body part from others, the example of which could be his ear, skin transplantation, and so on. Naturally, seeing it also as a self-pleasurable act of masochism. All of this also to achieve the main goal of his surgical perfection, and that goal is not appearance, but the functionality of his body. He removed some of his ribs, reduced the contents of his abdominal cavity, modified his cardiac apparatus and bone joint structure to make himself an even more perfect killer puppet for his master. Again, all of the above is my personal perception of the character based on what is shown in the film, which may be contrary to the official biography, but why not? And as usual, Kroenen's story is not the story of a ruthless Nazi. It's a story about how music doesn't always save the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Also leave a comment down below and share this video with your friends. Bye!